And one of the interesting points about the crisis in the world economy is that there are many issues on which Jamaica in general, but I fought the multilaterals in terms of their rigid ideological, almost religious zeal in terms of advocating certain policy positions. And then I look at the U.S. Treasury, which is essentially printing money to finance the stimulus packages. And the IMF says, go ahead, please go ahead. I said, puss and dog are the same luck. Not that I wanted to print money, but it just struck me that the issue, the manner in which it was dealt with suggested that they have abandoned the one-size-fits-all analysis and are proceeding on a case-by-case basis. And we need, therefore, to look at our own case. In looking at the fixed versus flexible, let me do like Damien. It's the first time I've had anybody present the end of the film and then say, no, let's watch the preliminaries. So he gave his conclusion and then presented. And I'm clearly coming down on this side in terms of flexible. And there are a whole range of questions. But it was interesting to me, Damien, that you did not seek to pose the extreme form of the fix. Why not dollarization? Why not say, let's abandon all this pretense and proceed to dollarize? So I just wanted to know why in your, it was never at any stage mentioned as an approach. So, for example, the fixed exchange rate of the Eastern Caribbean Bank. The Eastern Caribbean Central Bank is not really a central bank per se, and you could easily dollarize and avoid much of the facade. All due respect to Sir Dwight, but this is one of the points I wondered why he didn't raise. There are lots of issues in flexibility. When Mr. Siaga promoted the notion of his three bills, there are several questions which we posed then and still remain valid. At what rate? How do you determine the rate which the central bank would be willing to defend per se? What happens if there are changes? And Damien's paper makes a point about the difference between the currency of the country to which you're pegged. Suppose domestic situations are different. So how do you change? How do you effect a change? Because it's not just a technical issue, it's convincing the population that I have got it right this time. So how do you change? And I'm just pointing to some of the real world problems, not just the equation and the mathematical equation, but how do you change and then how do you convince the population that this new fixed rate is the rate which we shall die by? And there are issues of the structural rigidities. I think this was in my letter to you, Keith. I would, well, I was going to say I'd like to see the political leader who could convince the trade union movement to that increases of 1% or whatever the trading partners increases were they appropriate, but then President Prime Minister has been able to convince the trade union leadership that zero is better. But I do not know whether it is a sustainable policy. In general, how do you adjust down expectations in terms of what increases should be consistent with your fixed exchange rate status? Because there has to be, if not a one-to-one, some alignment between the movements within your country and that price movements and wage increases represent just another price movement, and those which obtain in the country. So that structural rigidity is one which, regardless of how well you have done the technical work, that structural rigidity is a critical issue. And I think I also raised, Keith, structural rigidities are not just with regard to the trade unions. I recall at that stage the whole question of why are interest rates so high, and the banking community united said the reason the interest rates are so high relate to the reserve requirements by the central bank.